All right, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter and The Hill's John Solomon each out with brand new reports detailing the ongoing allegations in the House and the Senate as to whether the FBI agent, remember Peter Strzok, and other FBI employees may have been responsible for media leaks surrounding the Russia investigation. Joining us to break it all down are The Hill's John Solomon, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter, and along with us, the author of the bestseller Trumped Up, Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz is with us. All right, let's get to the details. John, we'll start with you. Basically, they are admitting when they talk about, oh, they have advanced knowledge of this thing. Oh, the article is out, but hidden behind a paywall. And then it gets, goes through the whole tone is anti-bureau. Just a tiny bit from us, Page replies. There's more, and then the CF article. I mean, are they not referencing they are leaking to the press? And what does that mean? How profound is that?
I don't think we know entirely, but congressional investigators certainly have a strong suspicion that these text messages point to an operation inside the FBI that was leaking information, spinning reporters, tracking down reporters. There's a whole effort where the two of them are trying to track down the great reporter from the New York Times, Matt Apuzzo. And why else would they be trying to track down a reporter unless someone wanted to talk to him? But I walked away. I read through hundreds of these messages over the week. I walked away from one thing. I remember the moment when James Comey in his testimony said, FBI agents don't give a rip about politics and they don't leak. After you read these messages, you walk away thinking these two FBI agents cared a lot about politics and they were monitoring the media almost like they were a press office.
I keep hearing, Sarah, that we're going to learn a lot more about a connection between some people within the intelligence community and the CIA and elsewhere about their relationships with the media. But my more specific question for the moment has to do with, I think, one of the worst parts of this is they're looking up the names of the family, the kids of a particular New York Times reporter. What, because they don't like his reporting?
Well, we don't know, do we? These are the questions that the committee members want to have answered, and that's why they want to interview Strzok. They want to interview Lisa Page. And remember, this is just what we've been looking at, these text messages between the two of them. But you also have General Counsel James Baker, who they want to question, and Andrew Weissman, who's over at the DOJ.
What about Page advising McCabe?
Exactly. Page advising McCabe, and all of the questions that they have regarding, the insurance policy with McCabe. So they're going to want to question Andrew McCabe, the deputy director,
and this is
apparently going to be leaving in March.
A few hundred texts, and it's going to be slow released to these agencies, the House and Senate committees.
Well, we're hoping
9,500.
9,500, but they're expected to receive all of those very soon. They won't be slow rolled out. We're expecting a lot by January 11th.
You see this type of leaking. I have followed your comments on this very, very closely. And then you see that the Trump-Russia collusion narrative is really dying and withering on a vine. Now they've moved into a collective media bubble that, oh, this president, we got to go to the 25th Amendment. What is your reaction to all of it?
25th Amendment is totally irrelevant to what's going on. It was designed for somebody who had a stroke or was involved in a serious accident and was incapacitated. It requires the vice president, the cabinet, 2/3 of each house of Congress. It's a fool's errand.
It's not going to happen.
Think about it. Of course it's not going to happen. But what they're trying to do, though, is now that they couldn't criminalize political differences, they're trying to pathologize, to psychiatrize political differences. They're trying to say, oh, maybe we can't get him on crime, but we're going to show that he has mental problems, that he's disturbed. A guy on CNN today was talking about he has Alzheimer's. He should be subjected to a neurological exam. That is so dangerous. That's what they did in the former Soviet Union. I was involved representing some dissidents in the Soviet Union who were sent to mental hospitals. They did that in China. They did that in apartheid South Africa.
Did you know, Nathan or Solzhenitsyn?
There was a guy
Solzhenitsyn gave that big speech. I think it might have been at Harvard.
It was at Harvard. I was there.
Right.
It was a guy named Roy Medvedev who wrote a book about being committed to a psychiatric hospital. But it was a pervasive way that tyrannical governments use the power of psychiatry to try to not answer the merits. We don't want to debate the merits. He's crazy.
The Soviet Union was notorious for this, wasn't it?
They were doing it all the time. And the American Psychiatric Association sent a delegation. And the American Psychiatric Association at the Goldwater case said it is wrong for any psychiatrist ever to diagnose anybody without them examining them. Look, I taught law and psychiatry for 25 years at Harvard. I edited the textbook on law and psychiatry. And the first rule of psychiatry is you do not diagnose based on political grounds
funny you say
or
this.
based on.
Years ago, I read the book, The Synthesis of Russian Mind Control Techniques. That's everything you're discussing, and it's all true.
And
every bit of it's true.
So dangerous.
So dangerous.
If you don't like somebody, vote against them.
Exactly.
I voted against Donald Trump. I voted for Hillary Clinton.
By the way, but it's the only thing we disagree on.
Okay,
I'm just teasing.
But I'm doing it not from a political
No, but you're doing it
perspective.
from a constitutional law perspective and the threat to the Constitution.
Right.
This is a clear and present danger. It's let me bring John and Sarah back in. Sarah, you add to that, you know, when you start surveilling, unmasking, you don't minimize, and then you leak raw intelligence. They did that to General Flynn. And then I'm sure, I will bet everything I have, that they said, oh, you either agree that you lied to us or we're going after your son.
Of course they did.
Of course, right?
And that is definitely what I'm hearing from my sources. I mean, right now, Sean, there are 27 leak investigations at the Department of Justice. That's triple what they had over the last 3 years. So 27 leak investigations. One of those, I guarantee you, is General Flynn, the leak, the classified leak between General Flynn,
Nobody talks
his phone
about it anymore.
conversation with Kislyak.
There was a crime there.
It was a major crime, and we're looking at those leaks, and we're also looking at the Inspector General right now. We're waiting on that Inspector General's report.
It's only a crime
and that's
if it's a grand jury.
Biggest.
It's only a crime if it's leaking grand jury minutes.
Not in
FBI just leaking is a violation of their rules, but it's not itself a crime. Look, leaking has been a weapon of prosecutors for years. I've had prosecutors tell me implicitly, if you don't plead your client guilty, you will be shocked at what will come out about him.
Death by 1,000 cuts, isn't it, Professor?
That's exactly right. And I'm against it, whether it's leaking against Hillary Clinton or leaking against Donald Trump. It's wrong. You don't leak.
John Solomon, we only have a small percentage of these. And I'm like, wow, if we only have hundreds and there's thousands, what's next?
Yeah, I think the question is who's going to follow this breadcrumb trail? Somebody led a breadcrumb trail to create the Russian narrative. We got to get to the bottom of it.
Great work. Thank you.
Here now, the aforementioned Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of the Daily Wire, who wrote today's 5 reasons why Oprah would win and 5 reasons why she could lose. Ben, good evening. Good to see you as always. You know, we thought that a matchup between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump was going to be fascinating, and indeed it was. But this could be a whole new level.
No question. I mean, Oprah Winfrey is the most well-known person probably on planet Earth outside of President Trump. So you'd have 2 of the most high-profile people in American history battling it out. She obviously is another self-made billionaire. She has cultivated particularly female audiences for the last 30 years. She's a television star. She has a really great personal story. On the other hand, she is a conspiracy theorist. She is on the far left. And her image as sort of uniter, not a divider, would certainly take a hit were she to get political. It's one thing for President Trump, who basically has been hit with every piece of mud and emerged unscathed, to run for re-election. Oprah Winfrey is basically seen as this almost angelic figure in American pop culture. And if she is hit at all with any sort of scandal, it may not affect her quite the same way. If you want to move from a place where 90% of people love you to a place where 50% of people hate you, quickly move into politics.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump has certainly witnessed that himself during his transformation from being a private citizen to being president of the United States. Do you think, you know, when you look at America as a society, are we living in a world where you almost have to be a celebrity? You look at all the people who've thrown their names in the ring. You know, Mark Cuban, Kanye West has talked about it, The Rock has talked about it, and you know, you start to wonder if you're living in this sort of, you know, freakish parallel universe lately.
I think there's some truth to that. I think the idea that high name recognition makes a difference, particularly in primaries, is absolutely true. Can you imagine Oprah Winfrey losing primaries to Joe Biden? I can't. I think that if Oprah Winfrey runs against a bunch of typical Democratic politicians, they have a very hard time knocking her out of the race. Obviously, the Republicans couldn't knock Donald Trump out of the race, and he was less of a celebrity than Oprah Winfrey is. I think it's because Americans have this sort of dual-track mind when it comes to what they think the president does. On the one hand, we think that the president is there to do policy and engage in policy we like. And then there's really what we think the president does, which is say stuff. Right? When we think of people who say stuff, we tend to think of celebrities. We tend to think of the people who are on our TVs all the time. We think of these people as sort of the figureheads on the prow of the ship of state. And in that sense, if there are people who are very famous and we've already made our decisions about them, it's a lot easier for them to survive the slings and arrows than politicians who we may not have ever heard of and who can be taken down with a single scandal. Remember, in 2012, Rick Perry was basically knocked out of the primaries because he had mandated that Gardasil be used, right, a vaccine for a particular type of cancer for young girls. That knocked him out of the primary. primaries in 2012. Donald Trump got hit with everything, including the kitchen sink, and he won the election.
It's unreal. When you take a look at this potential matchup, you've got Oprah Winfrey, who I think would be so embraced by Democrats that she probably wouldn't be standing up there with 17 other candidates. I mean, when Donald Trump tried it, everyone just laughed at him. They thought he was not going to last, wouldn't make it through the summer, wouldn't make it through the fall. I mean, that's the very different dynamic here, Ben.
I think that's true. And I think Democrats also have a way of anointing candidates that Republicans simply have not had. In 2016, obviously, they anointed Hillary Clinton. In 2012, they thought about, in 2008, rather, they thought about anointing Hillary Clinton. And then Oprah Winfrey is the person who helped push Barack Obama over that finish line. So I think the chances are actually pretty good that if Oprah decided to run, she'd win the nomination. In a general election, I do have my doubts as to whether she would actually defeat the president. The last poll that I saw was from March, and it showed Oprah defeating Trump something like 47-40. But those aren't incredible numbers for Oprah. She has, I think, 49% approval versus 33% disapproval. Wait till she actually has to go through a political cycle or two and see how those numbers hold up.
I got to let you go, but one last thing. You sort of went out on a limb today. You said you don't think she was that brave. Everybody on that room was up on their feet. And you said she wasn't brave last night. What did you mean?
I mean, what the hell kind of risk was she taking? She was standing in front of an entire town filled with sexual abusers and harassers. She said nothing about it for 20 years. She's being cheered by people who said nothing about it for 20 years. And there she is, pretending that she's leading the fight. In what way has she led the fight? I sort of missed it. And just because she said some stuff last night, I haven't seen how things have materially changed. I mean, Reese Witherspoon was mentioned that she measures things before Oprah and after Oprah. What changed after Oprah? Oprah said a bunch of stuff. Well, I was under the impression that most of us agreed with that stuff when this stuff first broke, and she lauded the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. Where were they reporting on the sexual harassment and abuse scandal for the last 20 years? It is literally their job to cover Hollywood, and yet it took the New Yorker and Ronan Farrow to uncover all this stuff. Where was the Hollywood Foreign Press Association that was receiving such plaudits at the hands of Oprah Winfrey? Again, a woman who is good friends with Harvey Weinstein, being cheered by Meryl Streep, a woman who's gave a standing ovation to Roman Polanski.
Yeah, but there's a circle of support that ignored everything that you just mentioned so potently. Ben, thank you very much. Great to see you tonight.
Thanks a lot.